What if the horror you're filming on set doesn't stay on set? What if it follows you home? In 1973, the cast and crew of The Exorcist learned this the hard way. The film, based on a true story of demonic possession, was plagued by eerie occurrences from day one. But it wasn't just the usual bad luck you hear about on movie sets. This was something far darker. Strange events began happening before filming even started. The script, inspired by the real-life exorcism of a boy in 1949, had already been causing unease among the crew. The very nature of the film was disturbing, and many believed that delving into such dark territory might attract something sinister. William Friedkin, the director, later admitted that several priests had warned him against making the movie, but he pressed on, unaware of what was to come. Early in production, a fire broke out on the set, burning down nearly the entire McNeil house, except for one room. The bedroom where the possession scenes were filmed remained completely untouched. Investigators couldn't determine the cause of the fire, and many of the crew began whispering that something unnatural had protected that room. To calm nerves, the production brought in Father Thomas Birmingham, a priest, to bless the set. But even he admitted to feeling an oppressive force lingering around them. His blessings seemed to offer temporary relief, but the sense of unease never fully disappeared. As filming progressed, several cast members suffered serious injuries. Ellen Burstyn, who played Chris McNeil, was violently thrown across the room in one scene. The harness rigging that was supposed to control the stunt malfunctioned, causing her to slam into the floor with full force. The scream heard in the final cut of the movie was real. Her back was permanently damaged from the fall. Linda Blair, the young actress who played Reagan, also suffered a serious injury. During the bed-shaking scene, the mechanical rigging broke, causing her to be flung back and forth uncontrollably. She landed awkwardly, injuring her spine. Doctors later told her she might experience chronic pain for the rest of her life. And then there was Jack McGoran. The actor, who played Burke Dennings, mysteriously passed away from complications of the flu shortly after filming Wrapped. His death was eerily similar to his character's fate in the movie, but he wasn't the only one. In total, 9 people connected to the film died during production or shortly after its release. A night watchman at the set unexpectedly passed away. A special effects expert suffered a fatal accident. Even the actor who played Father Damien Cares' mother died before the movie's premiere. The growing number of deaths cast a shadow over the film, with many speculating that the production had awakened something evil. The cast and crew began to feel that they were being watched, followed by an unseen force. Some even reported experiencing night terrors, horrific dreams of demonic figures lurking in the shadows. When The Exorcist finally hit theaters, its eerie reputation continued to grow. Moviegoers reported feeling sick, fainting, and even having panic attacks. Some theaters kept ambulances on standby due to the number of people who required medical attention after watching the film. And then there were the unexplained phenomena. Projectionists reported that film reels would randomly snap while playing, or that the image would distort without reason. One cinema in Italy was struck by lightning the night of the premiere, setting part of the theater on fire. Some attendees claimed they saw dark figures moving in the corners of the room while watching the movie, as if something unseen had been drawn to the screening. After the film's release, Linda Blair's life took a terrifying turn. She began receiving death threats, mostly from religious extremists who believed she had conjured real demonic forces by portraying a possessed girl. Security was assigned to protect her, but it wasn't just human threats that terrified her. She spoke about experiencing intense nightmares, waking up to find scratches on her body that she couldn't explain. Objects in her home would move on their own. Doors would slam shut without warning. At one point, she even contacted Father Birmingham, begging for another blessing to rid her life of whatever had attached itself to her. William Friedkin, the film's director, was skeptical of the supernatural until something happened that made him question everything. Years after the movie's release, he visited the Vatican to meet with a priest known for performing real exorcisms. The priest agreed to speak with him, but warned him that the exorcist had opened doors that should have remained closed. As Friedkin left the meeting, he claimed to hear a whisper behind him, a voice that sounded exactly like Mercedes McCambridge, the actress who had voiced the demon in the movie. But McCambridge had not been in Italy. She had passed away years earlier. Some skeptics argue that the so-called curse was just a mix of tragic coincidences and heightened paranoia. But others believe that The Exorcist went too far, that by recreating a real-life possession and exorcism, they had attracted the very thing they were trying to depict. Even today, the movie remains one of the most infamous horror films of all time. And those who worked on it, many of them refused to talk about their experiences. Because, whether it was real or not, the darkness that surrounded The Exorcist never truly went away. Imagine walking onto a movie set, ready to create magic for the big screen, but instead, you stumble into something far darker than you could ever imagine. What if I told you that the set you were standing on was built on top of something ancient and sacred? And what if that very thing, something long buried, started to come back to life in the most horrifying way? Welcome to the real-life nightmare behind Poltergeist, a chilling tale of a curse that refuses to be silenced, even decades later. In 1982, Hollywood was buzzing with excitement. The Poltergeist franchise was gearing up to take the world by storm, promising to deliver one of the scariest movies of the decade. Little did anyone know, however, that the terror on screen was nothing compared to the unseen horrors lurking just beneath the surface. What was supposed to be a harmless film about spirits and haunted houses became a real-life horror story, forever marked by tragedy and death. The crew was eager to get started, but as they began to build the movie set, something deeply unsettling was discovered. This wasn't just any plot of land. They had chosen to film on a site with a dark, hidden past, an old cemetery. It wasn't just any cemetery, either. It was one that had been in use for over a century, where bodies lay undisturbed beneath the soil. The land was not only sacred, but it held the remnants of lives long gone. Yet, in the rush to save money and meet deadlines, the decision was made. Only the headstones would be removed, and the bodies would remain buried beneath the set. At first, everything seemed normal. Filming was underway, and the crew was excited to bring this terrifying story to life. But soon, something felt off. The first signs of trouble were subtle at first, easy to dismiss as coincidences. Lights flickering unexpectedly, the faint sound of whispers in the dark, and strange, unexplained cold spots that sent shivers down the spines of those nearby. Then things escalated. Cameras malfunctioned without reason. Actors and crew members reported seeing eerie figures walking through the set at night, figures that seemed to disappear the moment they were approached. One night, as the crew worked late into the early hours of the morning, something even more sinister happened. The atmosphere on set grew thick with tension. The faint sound of children's laughter echoed through the halls of the soundstage, but no children were there. The crew had grown used to these disturbances by now, but that night something was different. A sense of dread filled the air, and for the first time, even the most skeptical crew members couldn't ignore the growing sense that they were being watched by something not quite human. As filming progressed, these strange occurrences became more frequent and violent. One of the most disturbing incidents involved a giant mirror that, despite being carefully set in place, shattered into 1,000 pieces on its own. No explanation, no cause. It was as if some unseen force was violently rejecting its presence on this cursed ground. The real terror, however, came once Poltergeist was released to the world. Dominique Dunne, who played Dana Freeling, was one of the first victims of the curse, though not in the way anyone could have predicted. Just months after the movie premiered, Dominique was brutally murdered by her ex-boyfriend, John Thomas Sweeney, in a senseless act of violence. Her death shocked everyone, especially since she was a rising star in Hollywood. The timing of it was uncanny. Her character in Poltergeist had been the first victim of the haunted house's curse, and now, her life was tragically taken just as she was beginning to make her mark on the world. Some whispered that it wasn't just a coincidence, that the curse of the set had claimed yet another victim. The darkness that had followed her from the set seemed to have bled into her personal life, claiming her before she could reach her full potential. But the horrors didn't stop there. Heather O'Rourke, the sweet, young girl who famously uttered the line, "They're here," in the original Poltergeist, would become the next casualty of the film's dark history. At the tender age of 12, Heather's life was cut short, though the circumstances surrounding her death remain shrouded in mystery to this day. Despite appearing healthy and vibrant during filming, Heather suddenly became ill shortly after Poltergeist was released. Doctors dismissed her symptoms as something benign, but within days, her condition worsened dramatically. The diagnosis: a severe intestinal issue that had gone undetected for far too long. Tragically, Heather passed away in 1988, just days after being rushed to the hospital. Her death was ruled as a complication of a misdiagnosed intestinal condition, but many couldn't help but wonder, was it just bad luck, or was there something more sinister at play? The poltergeist curse had struck again, taking a young life far too soon. Even the actors who played the film's villains weren't spared from the curse. Julian Beck, who portrayed the terrifying Reverend Kane in Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, was another victim. Just months before the film was to be released, Julian was diagnosed with stomach cancer, a diagnosis that would lead to his death in 1985, before he ever saw his final performance on screen. But what's even more chilling is that Julian was fully aware of his condition while filming. In interviews, he spoke of how his deteriorating health mirrored the darkness that surrounded the character of Reverend Kane. Some say that his experience with death, both in life and in the movie, made his portrayal of the sinister preacher even more haunting. The lines between reality and fiction seemed to blur as the curse slowly crept in, taking yet another soul. And then, there's the infamous clown doll, one of the most iconic props in Poltergeist. If you've seen the movie, you know the sinister clown doll that terrorizes the young boy, Robbie. The doll became a symbol of fear for fans of the movie, but for the crew members who worked with it, the clown was more than just a prop. It was a source of real terror. The special effects technician who helped create the doll later revealed that the clown would move on its own when no one was around. At first, it was subtle. Its head would turn slightly, or its eyes would seem to follow you. But eventually, the movements became more pronounced and violent. The technician even claimed that the doll's hands would twitch as if trying to reach for something. Some believe that the clown was somehow possessed, that it became the embodiment of the restless spirits that had been disturbed during filming. Whether it was the spirits of the dead who had been left undisturbed or something darker, the doll was never the same again after the filming of Poltergeist. To this day, the Poltergeist curse remains one of Hollywood's most enduring legends. Some say the curse is simply a series of tragic coincidences, but others believe that the disturbance of the dead, those whose graves were left untouched beneath the set, was what triggered the wrath of the spirits. Whether it was the spirits of the buried, the curse of a long-forgotten cemetery, or something even darker, the curse seems to linger over the Poltergeist franchise, leaving a trail of tragedy in its wake. And though decades have passed since the original film was released, the echoes of the curse still reverberate. Those who were involved with the film, from the actors to the crew, have been haunted by the darkness that never quite left them. Some even claim to still feel the presence of the spirits, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the next chapter in the horror that never ends. So, the question remains, what happens when you disturb the dead, and they refuse to stay buried? Poltergeist gave us a glimpse of that answer, and the curse it spawned continues to remind us that some spirits will never rest in peace. Picture this. You're on a horror movie set, surrounded by the eerie silence of the night, preparing to shoot one of the most terrifying scenes you've ever been part of. But then you glance to the side, and there it is, lurking in the shadows, an innocent-looking doll. The kind of doll that would make any child's room feel like a sanctuary. But this isn't just any doll. This is Annabelle, the real, cursed object that inspired a wave of fear across the world. And what you don't know is that it's watching your every move, ready to reveal its true power when you least expect it. When the cast and crew of The Conjuring gathered in 2013, they thought they were ready for anything. The film, based on the real-life accounts of famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, was set to tackle one of the most terrifying cases in their career, the haunting of the Perron family. What they weren't prepared for was the real-life terror that would follow them off-screen, brought to life by none other than the infamous Annabelle doll. If you're familiar with the Conjuring universe, you know Annabelle, the possessed doll who inspired one of the most successful horror spin-offs of all time. What many people don't realize, however, is that the doll featured in the film is based on an actual object, the very same doll that resides in the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. And while the film's doll was a prop, the real Annabelle had been causing chaos long before cameras ever rolled. As the crew prepared to film, it was decided that bringing the real Annabelle doll to the set would lend an authentic touch to the production. What they didn't realize was that the doll didn't need a camera to create horror. It was already doing that all on its own. From the moment the doll was placed on set, things started to feel off. At first, it was subtle. A flickering light here, a sudden temperature drop there. But as the hours wore on, the disturbances grew more frequent and more sinister. Cameras malfunctioned without reason. Lights flickered like the doll was draining the room's energy, and crew members began to report an overwhelming sense of dread whenever they were near it. The uneasy atmosphere reached a boiling point when a security guard, tasked with patrolling the set late one night, claimed to have witnessed something utterly chilling. According to the guard, as he walked past the prop room, he noticed the doll sitting in its glass case. But when he glanced back moments later, it wasn't sitting still. Its head had turned slowly, as if it was following his every move. Panic set in as the guard fled the set, quitting his job on the spot, leaving behind a chilling account of what he had witnessed. Yet, this was only the beginning of the terror. Then came the most terrifying moment of all, a moment so unsettling that it would forever haunt those involved. It began innocently enough. A group of actors, eager to lighten the mood between takes, decided to take a photo with the Annabelle doll. With the flick of a camera's shutter, the photo was captured. But when they looked at the screen to review the picture, something was horribly wrong. The screen had gone black. At first, they thought it was a glitch, but as the camera was reset, they saw the photo. The actors smiled, their faces relaxed, but Annabelle was not the same. Her once innocent, doll-like face had twisted into a horrifying grin. Her eyes, which had been empty and soulless moments before, now glowed a deep, unnatural red. The room grew heavy as everyone stared at the photo, frozen in fear. The actors claimed they felt a sharp, cold presence surround them, as if the doll was feeding on their terror. Immediately, the crew decided that Annabelle had to be removed from the set. The damage, however, had already been done. As filming continued, the crew tried to shake off the unsettling events, but they couldn't escape the feeling that something was wrong. Several cast members began to report disturbing nightmares that followed them long after they left the set. These weren't just bad dreams. They were vivid, horrifying visions of being attacked, suffocated, or trapped in a dark, suffocating room. It wasn't just one or two people. It was nearly everyone who had come into close contact with the doll. But it wasn't just the dreams that haunted them. One actor, in particular, started waking up to find unexplained scratches on his body. The marks would appear out of nowhere, sometimes in the middle of the night, as though something or someone was reaching out to leave a mark. At first, the actor dismissed it as a coincidence. But when more cast members started to report similar injuries, he couldn't ignore the terrifying possibility that they were all connected to the cursed doll. The most chilling account came from James Wan, the director of The Conjuring. Wan, a man known for his mastery in creating fear on screen, had never encountered anything like this. In interviews, he spoke of an oppressive presence that would settle over him whenever the doll was nearby. He described feeling as if the very air around him had thickened, as if an invisible force was pressing down on him, watching him with malicious intent. Wan, normally a master of controlling the environment on set, found himself unable to shake the feeling of being helpless and exposed. As the production wrapped and the crew left the set, many thought they had escaped the terror. But for some, the horrors didn't end with the final shot. Reports started surfacing that the sense of dread and unease had followed them home. One actor claimed that she had begun to hear footsteps behind her whenever she was alone. Another reported that doors in her house would slam shut with no explanation. As for the real Annabelle doll, it was returned to the Warrens Occult Museum, where it remains encased in a glass box, a constant reminder that some things are better left undisturbed. But even in its case, the doll continues to exude an energy that has left countless visitors feeling a chill down their spine. The Warrens themselves claimed that they had experienced unsettling occurrences with the doll, from lights flickering to objects moving on their own, reinforcing the belief that Annabelle is far from just a doll. She's a conduit for something darker, something ancient. To this day, Annabelle remains one of the most famous haunted objects in the world. And while her story has been immortalized on the big screen, the real terror, the one that plagued the cast and crew of The Conjuring, is even more disturbing. It serves as a chilling reminder that the line between fiction and reality is often far more fragile than we'd like to believe. Some things, once disturbed, will never leave. And Annabelle? She's not done yet. These stories prove that sometimes the scariest things aren't on the screen, they're lurking behind it. So the next time you watch a horror movie, remember, the real terror might not be fictional after all. Would you dare to work on a horror movie set after hearing these stories? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more bone-chilling tales from the world of the unknown. This is Mr. Whisperer signing off for now.